A hidden crisis is erupting within Russia's energy core, one that threatens to fracture its entire empire. The warning signs aren't coming from Ukraine or Western capitals, but from the very ally Putin once relied on most, Kazakhstan. Picture this: years of strategy built around turning east, selling oil and gas to China and India to weaken Western sanctions. It was his pride, his shield against economic pressure. Yet now, this fortress is crumbling. Kazakhstan, the vital conduit for Russian oil bound for China, appears ready to betray Putin, bowing to U.S. sanctions. This isn't just diplomatic posturing, it's a potential chokehold on Russia's energy lifelines. The damage could be irreversible, with billions evaporating in a blink. The trigger? The U.S. Treasury's sanctions targeting Rosneft, Putin's main financial sponsor, aim at the crucial Adasu-Alashenku pipeline. This pipeline, a backbone of Russian-Chinese oil exports, pumps over 10 million tons of crude yearly, enough to flood the market with hundreds of thousands of barrels daily. It's not just metal and pipes, it's a symbol of Kremlin arrogance. If we're unwanted in the West, we'll sell eastward. But now, that certainty vanishes. As Washington tightens the noose, Kazakhstan faces an impossible choice: prioritize its own economy or remain loyal to Moscow. Recent signals from Kazakhstan suggest they're leaning towards self-interest. Who will blink first? If Kazakhstan halts the pipeline, Russia's ability to deliver oil to China vanishes overnight. Seaborne routes are danger zones, bold tanker fleets sailing through treacherous waters under shadowy threats. The pipeline, the very backbone of Russian logistics, could be severed. That means 10 million tons of oil could rot in Siberian storage, or Moscow might be forced to cut production, leaving billions stuck underground. Leaked diplomatic messages reveal Astana's stance: we won't sacrifice our own interests for Putin. Western diplomats nod, they understand. But the Kremlin fears chaos, sanctions, and diplomatic fallout. If approval for transit licenses isn't granted, Kazakhstan might shut off the tap entirely, even sever ties with Rosneft to dodge secondary sanctions. Meanwhile, this strategic blow hits China, Russia's biggest buyer. China relies heavily on pipeline imports, about 1.5 million barrels a day. But without this guaranteed supply route, Chinese buyers demand massive discounts. Russia's exports to China already dropped by 36% in November. Major state-backed firms like Sinopec and PetroChina are retreating, afraid of sanctions, leaving behind smaller refineries, teapots, that buy at even lower, loss-making prices. The once unstoppable Russian oil juggernaut begins to falter. This isn't just logistical disruption, it's an existential crisis, threatening to end Moscow's Eurasian integration fantasy. Every dollar lost chips away at Putin's budget, his war efforts, his influence. Yet, the story doesn't end there. On another front, India is turning sour on Russia. Putin's strategy to rely on the South, believing India and China would buy Russian oil at steep discounts, may be unraveling. Market forces are ruthless. India is now sourcing oil from a tiny South American country, Guyana. Recently, giant oil tankers laden with 2 million barrels each departed from Guyana's shores, heading toward India. This isn't just a trade shift, it's a death sentence for Russia's hopes of holding on to its market share. When these ships arrive, they'll send a message: Russia's days as the primary supplier are numbered. Indian refineries, alert to rising U.S. pressure, are abandoning Russian oil. Russian crude, once cheap and plentiful, has become toxic. Delayed deliveries, payment complications involving the rupee-ruble dilemma, and looming secondary sanctions make it too risky. Guyana's oil, clean and legal, offers stability. India's pivot away from Moscow exposes the cracks in Russia's global position. The Kremlin's dream of dominance is fading, its power waning as buyers seek safer, more reliable sources. Russia's battle to control prices in the global market is slipping away. Once the loudspeaker at OPEC+ meetings, now Moscow resorts to shadowy middlemen, rogue traders, and dangerous sea routes, piracy tactics that blur the lines of legality. Johannes Rabal, a top analyst, notes Russian oil now filters through suspicious third-party organizations, operating like a clandestine network rather than a state enterprise. Every dollar less in revenue impacts Russia's war chest, hits the budget for Ukraine, and weakens Putin's control. The future looks bleak. With reduced earnings and dwindling market influence, Russia might have to sell its oil at rock-bottom prices, $40 per barrel instead of the planned $60 to $70. The once mighty energy empire risks crumbling from inside, its core vulnerabilities exposed. As global players turn away, Putin's grip on power could weaken, transforming Russia's energy dominance into a fragile shadow of itself. The question remains, how much longer can the Kremlin hold on before the foundation itself collapses? In the gripping shadows of global power shifts, India's maneuvers in the south and the European Union's shutdowns in the west are poised to crush Russia's energy dominance. Putin's once mighty weapon now feels dull and impotent. Today, we uncover the silent tremors rattling Russia's oil kingdom. We begin with Kazakhstan's pivotal betrayal. Imagine the raw power of oil surging like a black river through frozen Siberian veins. Feel the icy bite of winter winds whipping across western oil fields. Russia has pumped crude into China's very core for years, using Kazakhstan's land as a vital artery. A colossal pipeline system carries it forward. This lifeline, the Adasuelishenko pipeline, stands as more than steel and welds. It's the Kremlin's defiant boast incarnate. If Europe rejects us, the East will devour our bounty, they sneered. Through its throbbing veins, Rosneft delivers 10 million tons of crude annually to China, unleashing a torrent of cash, 300,000 to 400,000 barrels daily. Yet, as 2025 fades, rust creeps onto this flow's valve. Not from Astana or Beijing's whims, but from an office 10,000 kilometers distant, in Washington's power halls. In October, the U.S. Treasury unleashed blocking sanctions on Russia's oil titan, Rosneft. Financial insiders call it the sector's death knell. Why? Because any entity dealing with Rosneft, paying, transporting, trading, gets exiled from American finance. Kazakhstan, a customs union ally in name, faced a brutal choice: economic life or Kremlin loyalty. Without a blink, they chose their own fortunes. Belarusian reports claim Kazakhstan's energy ministry and operator, Kaztransoil, recently messaged Washington, pleading their case. They beg for a general license. Allow us to handle this oil, or we'll scorch alongside it. Kaztransoil pockets $15 per ton transit fee. But if Washington denies and sanctions tighten under Trump's second term, what shattering outcome awaits? Kazakhstan could halt transit at once. Picture the pipeline's roar silenced, a deafening void in Russia's supply chain. Does Putin hear the echoes of his empire cracking? Can you smell the panic in the air? If this valve slams shut, Russia's overland oil pathway to China vanishes overnight. Sea routes loom perilous and costly, tankers hunted like shadows in the dark. The Adasuelishenko was Russia's logistical fortress. Now, Kazakhstan threatens to break its spine. 10 million tons of oil rot in Siberian tanks, or force production cuts to sell elsewhere. Leaked whispers from Kazakh meetings with US and EU envoys sharpen Astana's stance. Sources like the Moscow Times revealed diplomatic cover: we honor our global obligations. Translated, we won't bleed for Putin. Western allies nod, but the Kremlin fumes over potential chaos. Without a license, Kazakhstan halts the tap and severs Rosneft ties, shielding Kazakh crude from secondary blows. China's fury simmers in the mix. Most Russian oil arrives by sea. 1.5 million barrels daily. The pipeline was their shield, now shattered, buyers demand steeper discounts. November exports to China plunged 36% to 926,000 barrels daily, per Kpler data. State firms like Sinopec and PetroChina retreat in fear. Only shadow teapot refineries remain, buying at basement prices, even losses. Is this merely a disruption? Or the Eurasian dream's demise? Moscow straddles its pipelines in its own sphere. Transit payments of $150 million shift to local currency, exposing the ruble's slide into worthless paper. If Kazakhstan drills the nail into Russia's coffin, India's pivot shovels dirt atop it. From the war's start, Putin banked on global South allegiance. India and China would forever gulp cheap Russian crude, defying sanctions. But markets rule ruthlessly. Interests over loyalty. India prepares to abandon Russia. A bombshell Bloomberg report via ship trackers unveils New Delhi's trump card. They've unearthed a fresh, sanction-free ally, Guyana. This tiny South American nation morphs into a predatory beast, snatching Russia's slice. Tankers Cobalt Nova and Olympic Lion, each brimming with 2 million barrels, sailed from Guyana shores, bound for India. By January 2026 arrival, it's not mere commerce, but a geopolitical slap. Indian refineries dodge U.S. heat on Rosneft and Lukoil. Shadow fleets risk sinking. Russian oil turns toxic, delays, rupee-ruble snags, sanction perils. Guyana's oil shines pure, lawful, secure. Experts warn catastrophe for the Kremlin. India was Russia's savior post-Europe, selling at $30 to $40 discounts. That door slams. Diversified, India strands Russia on China alone. Pair Kazakhstan's lock with India's Guyana flirtation. Russia's oil reign fades into oblivion. No more market mastery, no pricing clout left. Russia, OPEC plus fist shaker, now scams, shadow firms, risky seas. Analyst Johannes Rebane notes suspicious third parties masking Rosneft, Lukoil. Criminal tactics, not a nation's trade. Each revenue dip stars Ukraine's occupying forces. India courts Guyana. China turns to coal or Middle East oil. Kremlin's $60 to $70 budget blows to $40 dreams. Yet, the empire fractures further. Ally by ally allies drift, leaving Putin isolated. Humiliation mounts, as Russia's energy fable crumbles. What impossible twist awaits next? Will India fully snap the southern chain, or China unleash retribution? Amid the stench of betrayal, the ruble's decay, and oil's toxic haze, Russia's throne teeters. Stay locked on this unraveling saga. But if the turn to the east unravels, where does Putin pivot, in desperation's grip? Kazakhstan's pipeline operator has pleaded with Washington for a special license. They demand permission to ship Russia's oil. Otherwise, they warn, we'll suffer the flames of sanctions too. Kaztransoil earns $15 per ton transited. But what if the United States denies this plea? In Mr. Trump's next term, penalties could tighten even more. Then, Kazakhstan might slam the brakes on transit right away. Imagine the chaos. If Kazakhstan locks down pipeline flow, Russia's safe, speedy overland link to China vanishes instantly. Sea paths? Too risky and costly. Tankers dodge hunters from shadowy fleets. The Adasualashenko line was Moscow's sturdy spine. Now, allies could snap it. 10 million tons of oil might fester in western Siberian tanks. The stench of decay would rise. Or Russia must slash output, choking production like a noose. Silent alarms echo in the Kremlin's halls. Whispers from secret talks between Kazakh officials, Americans, and Europeans reveal Astana's stance. Sources like the Moscow Times report compliance with global rules. Behind the polite words, we won't wreck our economy for Putin. Kazakhstan signals this clearly. Western partners nod, but the Kremlin fears upheaval. Economic and diplomatic storms brew. If no license comes, Kazakhstan won't just shut valves. They'll cut all ties with Rosneft. To shield Kazakh crude from spillover bans. Touch it, feel the tremor. The earth's pulse shakes as alliances fracture. Worse, China reacts sharply. It hauls most Russian oil by sea. 1.5 million barrels daily flow. The pipeline was a rock-solid safeguard. Gone now. What sound does betrayal make? A low rumble, like thunder before a downpour. Chinese importers may claw for steeper deals. Data from CLR shows November exports to China plunged 36%. just 926,000 barrels per day. State-controlled titans like Sinopec and PetroChina retreat. Fear grips them, fingers tightening around contracts. Small, private refineries step in. Dubbed teapots, they scoop oil cheaply. At cost, even eating losses. Rosneft pleads, but discounts widen like cracks in ice. This Kazakh shift fractures Russia's Eurasian dream. Moscow loses sway over backyard pipes. Even transit fees, $150 million, must shift to local currency. The ruble's devaluation stings, paper turning to ash in pockets. India's looming betrayal heaps more dirt on Russia's grave. Markets judge harshly, no loyalty, just gain. As whispers of Guyana's oil tankers approach India, will China vanish next? Tension coils, a spring ready to snap. What fatal blow awaits if even this eastern pillar crumbles? The empire teeters, shadows lengthening. Russian oil exports to China, once soaring at 1.5 million barrels per day through a crucial pipeline, are now plummeting. This pipeline was more than just a conduit, it was a symbol of Moscow's strategic dominance. With its loss, Chinese buyers face mounting pressure to accept lower prices. Recent data shows exports have already dropped by 36%, to just under 1 million barrels a day, an alarming decline that signals cracks in Russia's Asian ambitions. Fearing sanctions and economic repercussions, major Chinese state-owned companies like Sinopec and PetroChina are retreating. They hesitate, wary of future restrictions that could freeze their assets. Left behind are small, private refineries, often called teapots, buying Russian oil at cut-rate prices, often at a loss. It's a desperate scramble to stay afloat amid tightening restrictions. This situation isn't just a logistical mess, it threatens to dismantle Moscow's grand Eurasian integration plans. The Russian dominance over its pipelines is slipping away. Even the small act of converting transit payments, some $150 million, into local currency highlights how devalued the Russian ruble has become, turned into unwanted paper, a symbol of defeat. If Kazakhstan's decision to sever the pipeline is the nail in Russia's energy coffin, then the news from India could be the final blow, yet even more devastating. For years, Putin relied on a single belief, that the global south was firmly on Russia's side. Substantial markets like India and China would forever buy cheap Russian oil, rendering Western sanctions powerless. But the hardest truth has emerged: markets obey only interests, not loyalty. India is now turning its back. A startling report based on ship tracking data from Bloomberg reveals Delhi's bold move, breaking free from Russian dependency with a fresh alliance. They've turned to Guyana, a tiny South American nation transforming into a major player. Large tankers, Cobalt Nova and Olympic Lion, each carrying 2 million barrels of crude, have set sail toward Indian ports. This isn't just about oil, it's a geopolitical statement. These ships carry the eventual death knell for Russia's status as an irreplaceable supplier. Once these tankers dock next January, it will be more than a commercial transaction, it will echo as a declaration: Russia's influence, once nearly unstoppable, is crumbling fast. The grand illusion of Russia's dominance in the global energy scene is fading into the background. The echoes of lost markets, collapsing pipelines, and shifting alliances threaten to drown what remains of Moscow's once powerful energy empire. The question remains: how much longer can this facade hold before the entire foundation collapses? A chilling development is unfolding for Russia's energy empire, an irreversible crack that threatens to fracture its very foundation. This silence isn't coming from the usual battlefronts or diplomatic arenas. No, the ominous sound echoes from a place Putin once trusted implicitly: Kazakhstan. Once hailed as Russia's steadfast ally, Kazakhstan appears poised to sever the crucial link that transports Russian oil eastward, directly challenging Putin's entire strategy of dominance. For years, Putin relied on the East as his shield against Western sanctions. He cut Europe off, pouring Russian oil and gas into China and India, his great economic fortress, his pride. But now, that fortress crumbles. Kazakhstan, the vital artery connecting Siberian oil fields to China, is caught in a treacherous dilemma. Under mounting U.S. sanctions, the lifeline of Russian exports via this pipeline, the Odessa-Alashenku, risks shutting down. If that happens, a full 10 million tons of crude could sit rotting in Siberian storage or be forced into catastrophic production cuts. Imagine the pipeline's steel body, once a symbol of Kremlin arrogance, proof that if the West ignored us, we'd simply turn east. Today, it's a fragile relic, vulnerable to a decision made thousands of kilometers away. Washington's sanctions threaten to cut off the entire flow, leaving Russia's cash cow, Rosneft, hemorrhaging. The massive revenue that funds Putin's war efforts could evaporate overnight. The stakes are staggering, nearly $50 billion at risk, quietly slipping from Putin's grasp as Kazakhstan considers its own economic survival over loyalty. And what about China? Once Russia's steadfast partner, recent signs suggest Beijing is hesitant to pick sides. Russian shipments to China, previously flowing at 1.5 million barrels daily, are already falling by 36%. Major Chinese refiners, fearing secondary sanctions, are pulling back, buying only at steep discounts or from uncertain sources. Small private refineries, operating at slim margins, are left to buy cheap, risky oil, any supply they can find. The once glorious Russian brand is losing prestige, replaced by suspicion, instability, and dwindling market share. But the real shock isn't just logistical, it's strategic. Russia's whole global positioning, once marked by bold declarations at OPEC+ meetings, is unraveling. The Kremlin now relies on shadowy middlemen and questionable traders, selling oil through unknown intermediaries, hiding the true origin of their barrels. This clandestine trade resembles organized crime, eroding trust and risking even further sanctions. Every dollar lost in oil revenue chips away at the budget for the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, each drop a blow to Putin's ambitions. Meanwhile, India, long Russia's lifeline in the global south, is shifting gears. The plan to maintain cash flow by offering discounted Russian oil is collapsing. Rising sanctions and geopolitical pressure are pushing New Delhi to seek new sources, most notably, Guyana. Ships laden with millions of barrels, previously shipping from South America, are now arriving at Indian ports, signaling a seismic shift. This isn't just business, it's a message: Russia's market share is slipping away. And India is leaving its former ally behind. As India pivots to Guyana, Russia faces a grim reality. The once unassailable energy giant is losing its pricing power, its prestige, and its strategic influence. The plans to sell oil at $60 to $70 per barrel are now myth. Instead, Moscow may be forced to accept a mere $40, if a market even remains. The difference isn't just numbers, it's the future of Russia's economic security and its global clout. In this quiet chaos, a bigger picture emerges. Kazakhstan's bold move could be the final blow to Putin's oil empire. The loss of the pipeline, the shrinking of China's imports, and India's diversification are all warnings, hidden yet deafening. A seismic shift is underway. The question remains, how much longer can Russia cling to its energy throne before it crumbles entirely? Imagine the Kremlin's hidden deals crumbling, shadowy traders masking Rosneft and Lukoil origins, turning Russia's oil trade into a secretive underworld operation. This chaos drains the treasury, with every dollar lost from oil punching holes in budgets for pensions, hospitals, and military fuel in Ukraine. What if Russia's biggest buyers slam the door shut, leaving Putin's empire gasping for air? Picture this: India's pivot to Guyana's fresh crude isn't just a shift, it's a brutal betrayal, unloading 2 million barrels from tankers like Cobalt Nova and Olympic Lion, straight to Indian refineries by January 2026. Feel the salty sea spray as these vessels cut through waves, carrying not oil, but the end of Russia's discount dreams. Why would India, once Russia's lifeline, turn away? Russian barrels now reek of risk, delayed shipments, payment snarls in rupees and rubles, and the shadow of U.S. penalties looming like storm clouds. Guyana's oil flows clean and steady, no toxic baggage. As those tankers dock, Russia's market share shrinks, experts whisper of disaster. India was the crutch after Europe bolted. Now, with $30 to $40 per barrel discounts vanishing, cash flows choke. Combine this with China's pipeline woes through Kazakhstan, and Russia hangs by a thread, dependent on one buyer. The once mighty player at OPEC Plus tables now scrambles with pirate-like routes and anonymous firms. Analyst Johannes Raubal calls it a criminal racket, not statecraft. Every buck in oil revenue dips carves deeper budget scars, fueling the Ukraine conflict's endless grind. India eyes Guyana's bounty. China leans on local coal or Middle East streams. Russia's 2026 plans shatter like ice underfoot. The Kremlin eyed $60 to $70 sales. Now, desperation might drop to $40 or $50 if buyers even bite. That $20 gap? It's the pensioners' meager warmth, the clinic's vital supplies, the tank's rumbling engine, all fading into cold silence. But wait, as oil bleeds out, Russia's gas giant awakens in agony. Remember Putin's chilling vow at war's dawn? Europe would freeze, factories grind to halt, citizens rise in icy fury. Fast forward to late 2025, that boast echoes hollow, a monumental blunder etched in frostbitten history. Reuters' fresh figures hammer the final blow. EU pipeline gas from Russia plunges 44% this winter. Not a dip, the death knell. Recall 2018 to 2019 glory, 175 to 180 billion cubic meters surged yearly, powering Europe's hum. Now? A lucky 18 billion, if that, 90% evaporated. Gazprom, the former colossus, shrinks to a whimpering shadow. Why this route? Ukraine's defiant stand seals it. The Transit Pact expired January 1, 2025. Kyiv's unyielding no to renewal starves the lines. Those colossal pipes, once throbbing with blue flame's promise, now lie barren, echoing with emptiness. Moscow clings to one vein, Turkstream. Yet, per NSOG stats, it's 16 to 17 billion cubic meters? Mere droplets in an ocean of need, too scant to buoy the war machine. Putin's energy hammer rebounds to bruise his own hand. Europe didn't crumble, it adapted, warm and resolute. As Turkstream trickles, what desperate pivot awaits Russia next? But what if Europe's shift signals Russia's final downfall? Picture this, a vast network of gas pipelines, once the lifeblood of Putin's empire, now lying dormant and echoing with the hollow hiss of abandonment. The air grows thicker, laden with the metallic tang of rust spreading like venom. That expiration frenzy from January 1, 2025? It was _TBL the catalyst, with Kiev's unyielding refusal slamming shut the doors on Russia's European chokehold. Those colossal conduits, throbbing for decades with gas bound for the continent, stand barren today. Moscow clings to mere fragments, a single lifeline pulsating toward Europe, Turkstream. The shrill creak of straining metal warns of an impending shatter, like a fragile pane under relentless pressure. Feel the prickling chill as that cold reality bites deep, leaving the Kremlin exposed and vulnerable. Now, imagine the Kremlin's engine sputtering, that prideful roar fading into a desperate whine. According to NSOG data, the 16 to 17 billion cubic meters exported via Turkstream? It's mere droplets, insufficient to buoy Russia's war machine amid turbulent seas. From these intricate layers, Putin's energy arsenal has recoiled with devastating force. Europe didn't just forsake Russian gas, it fortified its defenses, purging the dependence like poison from its veins. Russia? Erased from the ledger entirely. Trace your fingers over the creaking dashboard of fate. The European Commission's blueprint for June 2025 envisions a total blackout on Russian fossil fuels by 2028. And grasp this, the 19th sanctions volley, unleashed October 23. Decrees annihilation for Russia's lingering aspiration, LNG, or liquefied natural gas exports, set to vanish January 2027. Sensory overload hits, the acrid fumes of charred dreams, pipes whistling futilely as if gasping their last. Is this the ultimate humiliation, watching adversaries pivot while the bully falters? No. Russia's core reels from this maelstrom. Gazprom, once an indomitable titan, bleeds record losses for the first time, its cash veins severed. Visualize thousands of miles of dormant conduits, coiled like discarded snakes, morphing into worthless relics. Gas wells in frigid Siberia shudder with a thudding finality, pressure unbalancing like a heart-ceasing rhythm, rendering revival an impossibility. Here lies the unyielding truth: Russia surrenders not only markets, but tangible output prowess. Whispers of regression echo, the industry reverting to faded glory days, when power was a mirage. How did a bold invasion intended to repel NATO spike it closer than ever? The Kremlin's gambit? An energy weapon to cripple Europe, now boomeranging as the West thrives independently, while Russia teeters on fiscal collapse's sharp edge. Kazakhstan slamming the crude valve. India rerouting tankers toward Vienna. Europe sealing the gas frontier, these jagged plots intertwine into a synchronous onslaught. Amid the smoky haze of betrayal, Putin's economy emerges as a solitary propeller aircraft, fuel drowning from oil and gas torrents. That power plant? Gone stale. The craft descends in ghostly glide, propelled by inertia alone, yet gravity's merciless decree endures unchanged. Prepare for the revealing jolt, a twist that flips the script. This isn't mere penalty, but a canvas where Russia's foes not only humiliate the aggressor, but orchestrate a era-defining exodus from dependency. What unseen maneuver seals the descent, pulling the empire into economic abyss? The roar of isolation intensifies. How will the Kremlin evade the freefall? Kazakhstan threatens to cap its pipelines. India reroutes tankers to Guyanese shores. Europe slams shut its gas valves. These aren't isolated setbacks. They form a synchronized siege against Putin's economic heartbeat. His regime's wealth hinged on a solitary engine fueled by petroleum and natural gas. That powerhouse has sputtered into silence. The aircraft of Russia's fortunes coasted forward briefly, riding leftover momentum, yet gravity's iron rule persists. A halted engine spells doom, a metallic screech echoing as the descent begins. The crash feels preordained. Astana's gamble with transit lines, New Delhi's tanker pivot, Brussels' locked gates, these herald not cautions but crescendos for the Kremlin. The illusion of boundless reserves fractures under sanction weights and supply chain carnages. Late 2025 might etch itself as the Russian energy colossus's downfall. Today's turmoils mirror not a titan in flux, but a Moscow ditched by comrades, teetering into fiscal abyss. Energy dominance morphs from menace to Achilles' heel. Yet here's the gut-punch twist: whispers of a shadow consortium, including ex-allies plotting to flood markets with surplus, crashing prices further, could turn Putin's stranglehold into his noose. How will Russia claw back from this abyss? Share your visions below. For unfiltered insights, dive deeper with us. Appreciate your viewership.